isn't it? You work long hours.
It's 6
6 p.m.?
p.m.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's okay.
Okay, good. So I won't keep you too long.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. So where do we start?
The beginning.
Okay. Was it possible to change my username to hello at Tilt Grind? Because the
I haven't.
sign in, yeah, the sign in for the CE certification is with my personal email, and I was just wondering if it was possible to condense everything to hello at Tilt Grind.
Send me an email
Yeah, I sent you one.
because
I'll send you another. Yeah,
okay,
no problem.
because I probably have to make another account.
Um,
But okay, no
if
problem.
I mean, well, let's leave it where it is. I mean, it's no.
Well, if you don't fill out anything, then it doesn't matter. You'll get a new login account. I'll just delete the other one.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. If you don't
Yeah.
mind, I appreciate that.
Okay. So yes,
So,
it's sunny at your place.
yes, it's not bad. It's not, I live
Nice.
in a nice place of the world. So do you, actually.
Well, but we seldomly have nice weather. Actually, today we are lucky. Today we have sunny weather,
Yeah.
but we had a very, very lousy summer. Let's see where I'm at.
Yeah, we had fires. So I think
Yeah,
everywhere in the world, everybody is dealing with something that's not normal anymore. I'm glad I'm old. I don't want to live another 50 years. I really don't. Let me slide out of here after a long, good life and I'm done.
yes, yeah. For me the same.
Yeah.
I hope to spend some years in a sunny place
Yep.
because I'm sick and tired of the rain in the Netherlands.
We
The
have.
temperatures are going up, but the weather is getting more extreme, it seems.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
longer periods of drought and then heavy rains. So,
But where in the world is it nice now? All the time. We have to keep moving around.
well, some places. I mean, maybe the coast. I was thinking about the coast in either Spain or Italy.
Ah,
That's still nice.
yeah, Portugal. Nice.
Portugal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to move into a converted van and travel Mother Nature across Canada back and forth
Oh,
every year.
oh, that's nice. Yeah.
That would make me very happy. Away from the madness, from the crowds. I'm done. I'm saturated. Seriously.
Really? Okay. Well,
Vaccinated, don't get vaccinated, don't eat this, eat that. I mean,
right.
you know,
So, how many of those grinders do you have to sell into Europe to make that happen? Huh? That's
quite a few. I've already gotten some more calls from Europe. I got two more from the UK and one from Germany. So
very good.
the only thing I'm struggling with is do I bother taking care of a broker or do I let the buyer take care of that? I'm trying to figure out what's normal for Europeans. Do they deal
Mhm.
with their own brokers when they buy outside of Europe or do they expect the seller to deal with that? I haven't gotten the answer on that yet.
Mhm. Well, if it is for the occasional grinder, then maybe let them take care of it. But if you do see pickup of sales, maybe to work with an importer and with a distributor who will take care of everything and do the distribution for you, clearance and what have you.
But I'd have to find that. And where do I
Yeah.
find, a trustworthy distributor? And, you know, it's not like I'm going to be selling 100 a month. If I was, yes.
Mhm.
If I sell at most five a month to Europe, that would be it.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to sell the company in another year.
Okay.
And then
And and it can be somebody else's headache.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Bye bye.
All right. Let us dive into the topic. Oh, let me connect my screen.
I'm going to be walking. Funny that you mentioned the Mediterranean. I'm going to be walking the El Camino on the coast of Portugal next September.
Oh, nice.
I can't wait. 3 days of walking. 3 weeks of walking, I should say.
3 weeks, nice.
Yes,
I
yes.
love walking.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, that's nice. And Portugal is a nice country.
Yep, it is. I look forward to it. So
And
nice.
it's not going to be too hot, I think, because you're at the coast.
Right,
There is always the wind from the ocean.
right. The breeze. Yes. My family is looking at either buying a summer property there or in Aruba. We haven't decided yet. I love
Oh, Aruba.
Aruba.
Aruba is also nice. That's familiar territory for
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I before we go on, years ago I was there and I broke my toe. I nipped it, my little toe. I looked at my foot and I saw my little toe do this, right?
Oh,
Literally sideways. And I went to the hospital and they were all Dutch doctors. I didn't realize,
yeah,
that
yeah.
Aruba is really as if it was
Yes,
in the
it was
Netherlands,
a colony.
the
Yeah, it
southern
was a
part of
colony
it.
of the Netherlands, but
Yes.
they're independent, although they are still in the kingdom.
Hmm.
But they have their own government, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Nice people, no hurricanes. The ABC Islands are beautiful. Aruba,
yeah.
Bonaire, and Curacao. So,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a nice place to retire. So
Yes.
you gave me an idea there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll turn
I
you into a very good realtor there, Rachel
I
Nordemir.
was I
Wonderful.
was in Suriname a couple of years ago, which also used to be Suriname is on South American mainland, so just north of Brazil,
Hmm.
and very strange because you come in this tropical country,
Yes.
everybody speaks Dutch,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the government, everybody, the laws, everything is Dutch, Dutch,
Yes.
Dutch, Dutch. It's
Yes.
very,
Yes. Yes.
and then the food is foreign. The food
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
exotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the closer you get to the equator, though, the hotter it's getting every year. That's the only. I don't like heat. I like
Hmm.
70 degrees maximum, and that's my happy place right there. So,
No.
anyways, let's
Okay.
compare
Well,
notes in a couple of years.
yes, exactly. So I think let me switch. If I don't know if you're familiar with Whereby, yes. So you can make the screen bigger for you if you click on those three dots in the corner. You can maximize, or
Yep.
then you can better see the screen.
Yep. I've done that.
So, but you have logged into the system, I guess, and you have already seen when you log in, there is nothing.
Nothing.
I'm logged in a demo account, so
Yeah.
this is why you see. But this is how it will look if you upload products there. Then from this dashboard page, basically you will have access to the main parts of the system.
Okay.
So the products will appear here.
Okay.
And of course, you can just click on the product brand name, and then you come to a page which we have called technical file,
Hmm.
and all the details about the product are there.
Okay.
Of course, um, you would need to provide the details yourself, upload the pictures, etc. But
Okay.
then you will find it here.
Okay.
Actually, if you go to this link,
Yep.
you will also arrive at the same point. So from here, my technical files. System is slow. Okay.
Okay.
So you will come to here, and this is also where you would add the product. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to add the product, you first need to add your company,
Okay.
because it's going to ask you to indicate which company the product belongs to. So,
Okay. Okay.
but back to the dashboard page. If you scroll further down, then you see here this section called Regulation Status Monitor, and a little bit further down, Standard Status Monitor. And I
Okay.
think that you already can see the idea is from here, you would see which regulations apply and what the status of those regulations are. And further down this, the standards and the status of the standards.
Yeah,
Now,
you
here,
wanted me to use the machinery directive of 2006.
We're going to discuss that today, which apply,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
you can use that information. When what
Okay.
is good to note is that when you are on the dashboard page, so the first page when you log in,
Mm-hmm.
the regulations that appear here are the regulations for all the different products that you have registered in the system,
Got it.
not just for one. While if you would go um, to my technical file, I could have actually just clicked on one of the products, and I click on one of the products, and you come to this technical file page.
Mm-hmm.
You will also see it scrolling down. You will also see it under compliance. You will see again applicable directives and applicable standards. But in this case, these only apply to this particular machine, or this particular, in this case, a machine. Yeah.
Okay.
So just be aware that that is the difference.
Okay.
Otherwise, you think maybe it's just duplication, but actually here it is product specific. While on the dashboard page, it is for all of your products.
Got it.
Why did we do that? Is basically for you to have um, one glance. If only this, you would log in once per month or once per quarter, just to log in and then scroll down to see what is the status of the different documents that apply to my machines.
Okay.
Yeah, because of course there can be changes to the regulations, and if documents are updated, then they
Right.
may go into a transition period. And when the transition period ends, you no longer, like for example here, what is read, these standards can no longer be um, referred to on your in your documentation. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because um, these are superseded in the meantime.
So who populates that section? Is it automatically done by the system when I add products?
So when you add products, let me show you.
Okay.
So, um, so here we are on the dashboard page. Here I can actually I cannot enter a product.
Okay.
Okay, so I would need to do it from my technical files.
Okay.
So because what you're going to do is you're going to add a technical file.
Okay.
But first I need to add a company.
Okay.
So I'll fill out this information. Once you have done that,
Yeah.
then I can add a product.
Okay.
I can select a company.
Okay.
In your case, you will see only one option, and that is your own company.
Right.
And then you fill out this information.
Right.
You can upload product pictures, etc. You submit, and once you have done that, it will appear here. Now, let's say this one. Then I click on it, and now I can start adding documentation. So in this case, I would add here, and in this box, I will add the number of the directives and regulations that apply.
But how would I know which ones apply?
That is what we're going to discuss today.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So this is where I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you
Okay.
how that works. So
Okay.
in the future, you can do that yourself. But in this case, I'm going to help you determine.
Okay.
And once you have selected all the ones that apply, you click submit.
Okay.
Then it's there.
Okay.
Now, what the status is of the different documents, that is something that is done behind the scenes by our staff.
Okay.
Because we are monitoring the regulatory updates every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when there are new directives, when there are new standards or standards change,
Mm-hmm.
our staff updates the database.
Okay.
And then automatically you will see the difference for those directives and standards that apply to your product. Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as they are green, in principle, you are good to go.
Okay.
What you will see in the course of this year. Machinery directive, yes, indeed, this is one of the directives that apply to your products. Yeah. And what you will see in the course of the coming year is that the color will change,
Right.
because we know that the machinery directive is currently the regulator is working on a new version of this directive, and we expect it to be adopted and published, I think, probably before the end of the year.
Would
Okay.
I fall under the old directive if I do this now, or do I automatically have to then adhere to the new directive?
Um, you apply the directives that are applicable in the moment that you're first selling.
Okay.
So, um, and once the transition period for a new version ends, all the batches that you send after the end of that transition period need to comply with the new version. Okay, and that means that you would, at a certain moment, you would start to see that this becomes yellow or orange, if you like, and then go in to determine what is the transition period, and then make a mental note for yourself. Well, more than a mental note, I would say, because what you need to do is to check what are the differences between the old version and the new version. How does it impact my machines? My estimation is that it's not going to have impact from the technical point of view, but maybe there will be procedural differences.
Okay.
As a minimum, you will need to use, you will start to use the new number
Okay.
on your documentation.
Okay.
So let's say you ship next week. You include a declaration of conformity. Then on the declaration of conformity, you are now going to refer to the numbers as they are current for the regulations as they currently are. And then if there is an amendment, after the amendment comes into force, all the units that have been sent to Europe are good. You don't need to do anything with those. But with batches that you are going to send out after the transition period ends, you have to make sure that you're now referencing the new number.
Okay.
So as a minimum, you would be updating some of your documentation.
Okay.
All right. Now, directives do not change so often, but the fact of the matter is that I know that the European Commission is working on a new version of the machinery directive. And mind you, it's due because the last version is from 2006.
Right.
And now machines are not the type of products that where the technology changes dramatically. But one of the things that they are currently working on is to make rules for example, artificial intelligence. Because in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, what we obviously did see a lot is that now there are more and more robots
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and artificial intelligence in controls of machines, and that may have huge impact on safety of machinery.
Right. Right.
And that is why it is now necessary to formulate some rules and requirements about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that is how that works with the system. From here, you can obviously also navigate. You can go here to the course 6-step framework. This is basically where you have all the material that is associated with the coaching sessions. So, and we will follow the same sequence as is displayed here,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the information you can already look at. Yeah. So, for example, here there is a lot of background information. And we do it like that because then we can focus on these calls. We have 1 hour, so we can focus on the main questions at hand.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is how that works. And you would just go through all the steps. Okay.
Let me ask you, so that
Yeah.
I use your time the best. Should
Yeah.
I try to do as much as I can before we have our call, and then we can have our call with all my questions? What do you think? What do you do?
It's okay. I mean, I don't think that in your case it's so complex that you have to be fully prepared. I know you are busy, and but of course it does help if you have if you're already prepared and you can say, okay, you have understood certain parts. I don't need to spend any time on that. But I'm going to make sure that you make progress. Yeah. And this session is by far the most, I would say, important one and intensive one
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in your particular case. Well, no, there will be another one on risk analysis because I want to show you how to do the risk analysis so you can do that yourself.
Okay. Okay.
And that does require some time as well.
Okay. It's not that I'm
Um,
busy. I just want to make sure that I use your time effectively, right?
yeah, but yeah, that's appreciated. But I don't think that we will come to a point that there is a lack of time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially the later sessions. There are sessions really that do not require us to be on a call for 1 hour. And
Okay.
so what we sometimes do is we instead of doing one session on conformity assessment, we do 2 or 3 if that is necessary.
So let me
And we will
ask
catch up.
you, the company in Amsterdam that's hoping we ship before the end of September, do you think we can accomplish that?
Depends on your time.
I'm dedicated to you. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's important for me to get this done.
Yeah.
So
Um, then, well, then we have to hurry up.
tracking.
No,
Okay.
we have to hurry up. But I think at the same time, the machines are not so complicated that I would already say no, this is impossible.
Right. Right. It's a pretty basic unit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the majority of the components are already CE approved. So yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Then let's go to the main topic of today, and I will use one of the tools that we also provide here. And I would just say, just click through, and then you will see where is what.
Okay.
I typically start from here, from EU CE marking directives.
Okay.
And because here you see an overview of all the European directives and regulations that require the affixing of the CE marking.
Okay.
And so you see there are quite a few, 58, but in fact, there are only 28. So you will see some overlap, but this is also because we still list the ones that have been superseded here in the system. So,
Okay.
and there is really no list or database that maps a product to a certain regulation. That is not how the European system works.
Okay.
That would definitely make it a lot easier,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, that would also lead to a lot of problems
Okay.
because of technological progress.
Okay.
The If you would work with the list or a database, then this would mean this list or database is under constant revision.
Okay.
And that would lead, obviously, to a lot of insecurity in the market.
Right.
So that is why the regulator has chosen another system. Whether a regulation applies needs to be decided by the manufacturer by looking at the scope, the definition of the scope.
Okay.
And for that, you basically have to go into the document. So there is unfortunately no other way than to go into these 28 different documents and to decide. But that is the reason why we are spending some time on this, so you can use my experience
Yep.
to quickly determine which directives apply. And that's what we're now going to do now.
Right. I mean, looking at this list, I know right away toy directives wouldn't apply to me, right?
Right.
Uh,
Well, that depends on what is the definition of toy. Yeah? But I can confirm. Yeah.
okay.
This
Okay.
is this may be a toy for some people, but
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Let's just go and I will show you the ones that I think apply.
Yes. And I did take notes last time, so I think there's three. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So machinery directive,
Mm-hmm.
and the machinery directive applies. The scope is provided here,
Mm-hmm.
and the first indent is the most important one. An assembly fitted with or intended to be fitted with a drive system other than directly applied human or animal effort, consisting of linked parts or components, at least one of which moves and which are joined together for a specific application.
Yes.
Well, a grinder has a drive system, there is movement, and so it would apply. What I The rest is not so important, so we'll skip that with an eye on the time. But what I would have to do is also check exemptions from the scope before I can decide whether the a directive or regulation applies.
Okay.
In this case, these are the exemptions: safety component, equipment for use in fairgrounds and amusement parks, certain electrical equipment such as household appliances for domestic use, audio and visual equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And then here are a few others, very specific. And these others do not apply because there are specific regulations for those.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, your product is not a safety component. It's not to be used in fairgrounds and amusement park. And here from the third, you can actually see that a printer that you have in your office does have moving parts, but is not covered by the machinery directive.
Got it.
Yeah. And then here a description how to comply. And if you scroll all the way down, and this applies to all of the directives that we have in that overview, you would come to this section, related files from the CE marking library. And this is where you can download all documents related to the directive.
Yikes.
And you can, yes, but this is,
I need to be an attorney to understand this.
well, and in fact, we provide this to you,
Yeah.
but we hope that you never have to use this.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in fact, I don't think that you have to use this. There is just one that I'm going to force you to read,
Yep.
and that is
The standards.
under standards. And then even these ones we'll skip, but we'll go to an overview. This is, 1 second, we'll give it a,
Yep.
it doesn't want to load.
No worries.
Try again. Okay. So this is a list of standards.
Okay.
The standards that are listed here are standards of which the European Commission has determined that they are harmonized with the machinery directive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? The content of these standards is harmonized, is aligned with the content of the machinery directive. And there are a lot. Does it say here? No, doesn't say, but I think this is 80 pages of standards.
Okay.
And so maybe I have to go one step back. I'm not sure that we discussed it already, but the difference between directive, regulation, and standard.
Okay.
Because otherwise you'll get confused also in the communication with your clients and with authorities.
Okay.
So the European Commission, which is the regulator, um, can choose different legislative instruments. And in this field, technical regulations, there are two that they typically choose, either a directive or a regulation. The difference between the two is not 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 to make it too complicated, but a directive is a type of document, a European Union document that has to be transposed by the member states of the EU into national legislation. A regulation does not have to be transposed. It has direct effect in the member states. Yeah. And particularly when the European Commission was starting to take over more and more responsibilities in technical regulation, and it started the early 70s, and then there was a peak from the 80s and the 90s. They very often chose the instrument of directive. And the member states liked that because they had the feeling that they would still have some control. It's obviously it's something for a member state to give up the right to regulate. Yes, just consider it the same as the states giving up the right to regulate a certain topic in favor of the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do that easily. They were a little bit nervous about that, and so in the beginning stages, the Commission chose directive very often. There was a ruling by the European Court of Justice that said there cannot be difference between the EU document and the national documents. Yeah. And the EU document always prevails over the national documents. And with this ruling, there was really not really a necessity anymore to have the documents in the form of a directive. Yeah. Long story short, for you, it doesn't matter if it is a directive or a regulation. I just want you to understand that in principle, it's the same type of document. It's the document that formulates the legal requirements for products to comply with. Okay. And then when it is a directive, just keep it in the back of your head that in principle, in all of the EU member states, you would find an equivalent document, an equivalent law or regulation regulating the same thing, but still not so interesting for you, because if there would be differences between the two, you could always refer to the directive and say, this is the rule that we have to follow. It is just that when you're dealing with a directive and when the authorities conclude that there is some kind of non-conformity, they would take corrective actions on the basis of the national law, not on the basis of the EU directive.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is the only time that you would be actually interested in what is the local law or regulation. Yeah. So directives and regulations, legislative documents, the legal requirements are formulated there. If you go in and you could actually do that for example, the machinery directive, you go in, you will see that a lot of these requirements are formulated in rather general terms. So, for example, with regard to machinery, there is a requirement that is about vibration. And it says something like vibration in a machine shall not be of such a level that it is harmful for the operator.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's it. That is the requirement. And it's up to the manufacturer then to determine for my type of machine, first of all, do we have vibration, yes or no? And if we do have vibration, is it harmful for the operator? They will need to do some research about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to make it a little bit easier for manufacturer, this is where the European Commission is referring to standards. Yeah, because standards bodies, they develop standards which give more explanation. In fact, the European Commission has mandated the European standards bodies to develop standards specifically with an eye to complying with the directives. And that is what the result of that is what you actually are seeing here now on the screen. This is this list of standards which have been well developed or recognized to be aligned, to be harmonized with the text of the in this case the machinery directive.
Okay.
We have to note that first of all, not all of the standards that are available for machinery are also included in this list. So there may be standards for machines that are not included here. In fact, a lot of standards that are applied, for example, in the United States, are not included in this list. Why? It's because here you will find only European standards, not American standards or Canadian standards,
Mm-hmm.
only European standards. And even not all European standards are here. So only the ones that have been checked and of which we have determined, yes, the content is harmonized with the content of the directive. If this is the case, then the Commission accepts these, the reference to these standards to be included in this list. And at that moment, we talk about, we call these standards harmonized standards. Okay. So when you hear the term harmonized standard, you understand this is actually a standard that is included in one of the lists that pertains to one of the CE marking directives. And these are the standards that we can apply to prove compliance with the directive or regulation. So coming back to the example of the requirement of vibration, for example, you would hope to find a standard which includes references or which includes, let's say, parameters or some kind of requirements, some kind of clauses which address vibration.
Okay.
Yeah. And because if you apply that particular standard, you know that you comply with the directive.
Okay.
This is a concept which we call presumption of conformity. If you comply with a standard that is included in the list, you benefit from the presumption of conformity. And that means I comply with the standards or standards, all the ones that are listed, the ones that apply to us, not. And then we are allowed to presume we comply with the directive.
Okay.
So that is how that works. So ideally, you would look for standards on the list. Having said that, the application of standards is not mandatory. And the reason for that being, the European Commission does not. So first of all, the European Commission does not want to force you to use a certain technology by fixing it in the regulation. They are describing in general the result that they would like to be achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Vibration should not be harmful for the operator.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest, they don't care. Whatever technology you come up with, as long as you comply, they are concerned with vibration and the negative effects of vibration on the operator.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they would fix these requirements or these parameters in a technical regulation, that would mean that you could not deviate. It would mean that you could not come up with a new technology, with an innovative technology.
Right.
And in Europe, we can only survive, our industry can only survive if it is innovative, because we can never beat China on the basis of cost. They would always make it cheaper.
Yep.
And so we have to come up with innovations. And that means our regulations should not hinder innovation.
Right.
And that is the reason why the standards are also voluntary. You are allowed to deviate as long as you can prove that you comply with these safety objectives of the directive.
Right. Okay.
But in general, they would say try to follow the standards as much as possible, because it's the easy way to prove compliance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unless you have a new type of technology that does not fit into the standards, where you would have problems complying, in that case, deviate and go through the effort of proving that the solution that you have chosen is as safe as what has been prescribed in standards. For your type of products, I don't see a reason why you would not use the standards. Yeah, because I don't see that there is some kind of special technology that would, yeah.
Right.
So then the next thing I want to explain to you is that there are different types of standards. As you can see, you will see here reference saying an A-type standard, here a B-type standards, and then if I scroll further down, you will see also type C standards or C-type standards.
Okay.
What is the difference? A C-type standard is a product-specific standard. So it's a standard that applies to a specific type of product.
Okay.
A B-type standard is a standard that applies typically to, let's say, product family or certain aspect of a product. And an A-type standard is a generic standard. Here in this example, we see there's one A-type standard listed, which is the one EN ISO 12100, General Principles for Design, Risk Assessment, and Risk Reduction. So this is a methodology for doing risk analysis. This applies to any type of machine. If I go further down to B-type standards, here you see the first one listed here is safety of machinery, minimum gaps to avoid crushing parts of the human body. Yeah, that's already a more general. It can be applied to, let's say, any machine that has gaps in them. And then if we go further down, then we come to C-type standards. And for example, there are C-type standards for metal presses, for sewing machines. So when you go into this list of standards, and you will, because I'm going to give it as a homework assignment, then ideally you would look for a standard for, in your case, a grinding machine.
Okay.
I'm not sure you will find it.
Probably not.
But this would be ideal, because if you can find a standard for grinding machines, then you basically can use that particular standard, and you would have all the requirements in there.
Okay.
Well, I have to warn you, because typically one standard refers to another, which refers yet to another. Yeah. for certain aspects. But um, yeah, so that is how that works.
Okay.
So since I'm going to ask you to look for this, um, shall I do it like, no, let me go one step back. So now you have seen this list of standards. You have seen that it is a table, and you have seen, well, you haven't seen it, but take it from me, it has hundreds of pages.
Yep.
Um, then we go one step back. So we have, you've seen that this is in a PDF document,
Mm-hmm.
and this applies to all of the CE marking directives. So if I go, for example, to the next one, low voltage directive, I would go here under standards. There is another list. So every directive has such a list.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, to make it easier for our customers, what we have done is we have converted all those PDF documents into a database, and you can access them from going here to tools and then to European harmonized standards.
Okay.
Yeah. And because now it is a database, you can do queries on the database across all those PDFs, so to speak. So now we could do something like, and I'm already showing you the tricks, grinding. Oh,
Look at that. Yeah.
stationary grinding machines. That is interesting. That may be just the standard that you need. And that would then be a Type C standard. Or this one, stationary grinding machines. Both of them sound to be maybe applicable. They are both related to this directive, and this is actually the number of the machinery directive.
Okay.
Um, I will come back to this. Let's first go and finish the deciding which directives apply. So we looked at the machinery directive, and we concluded, yes, the machinery directive applies. The next one to look at is the low voltage directive. And there is something specific about the low voltage directive. But first, let's see what it applies. When it applies, here under scope, it's described. So it applies to equipment designed to be used with a voltage rating of between 50 to 1000 volts AC, 75 to 1500 volts DC. This is the case, yes.
Yeah.
This applies to anything that is connected to the power mains.
Yep.
Then we would need to look at the exemptions from the scope. And we would see that your machines are not listed here. And so the conclusion would be low voltage directive applies.
Question.
Yes.
So plugs and socket outlets for domestic plugs and socket outlets. Our unit can be configured to work in a domestic outlet as well as an industrial outlet. So it's different voltage. So would I not be exempt according to that?
No. So this is for the plugs and socket outlets themselves.
Okay.
These are plugs and socket outlets are electrical equipment by themselves. Why are they exempted?
Okay.
They are exempted because after 25 years of negotiation, where the European authorities tried to harmonize the plugs and socket,
Mm-hmm.
they had to give up because none of the countries was willing to change their system.
Right.
And you can imagine why.
Ah, yes.
I mean, imagine that the UK would have to give up their
Yeah.
plugs and sockets. They would have to change the electrical insulation in every single house. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so this could not be achieved. What they have achieved is harmonized rated voltage.
Mm-hmm.
So the rated voltage in Europe is 230,
Mm-hmm.
220, 240. That's across the EU. That is already an achievement. But it does mean that in the different countries, you would ship with a different plug.
That was
Yeah.
the other thing that we're thinking is shipping it without a plug.
Right.
Because sourcing those plugs from here is
Yeah.
not easy. So we figured we'll just ship it without a plug. They'll have to get an electrician to put the plug on the cable.
Yeah, you can do that, but
But
really, it's not so difficult to find the plug. The probably the most difficult thing is for you to understand which plug do you actually need,
right, right. Okay.
and um, or you can look at how other companies are doing it nowadays. So what we see, I don't know, what is the rated voltage that the machines use themselves? Is it converted down to, let's say, 48 or 24, or is it really using 230?
That's a question for my business partner. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
glad I've recorded this call because I'm going to sit down with him and review
yeah.
this. Mm-hmm.
Well, if it is 230, then really there is no other solution than to come up with some kind of plug. Don't sell with a travel adapter, okay?
Right,
Because travel adapters are notoriously unsafe.
right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So then possibly sell them without plugs or but I think it is possible to source them. If once you know which one to order, then you can order them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, if it is converted down, then possibly you can choose the same solution as what a lot of companies are doing nowadays. Everything has this USB type of um, well, you know, the what Apple is doing with the phone.
Yes, yes,
You have this little brick, and then you can just change the head,
yes.
change it for another plug. That is also a very common solution nowadays.
Okay,
So
okay.
maybe that is the solution that would work for you. But low voltage directives, then you would say, okay, yes, low voltage directive applies. However, the European Commission has ruled in a guidance document, and we hope to get more clarity on this when they are publishing their new version of the directive, that despite the fact that you would fall under the low voltage directive, you do not have to list compliance with the low voltage directive, because actually the standards, the list of standards of the machinery directive already covers electrical safety. So at this moment, it is better not to list the low voltage directive on your declaration of conformity, because it would be an indication that you are not familiar with this rule.
Right. Okay.
So low voltage directive at this moment, you don't have to think about, because electrical safety, yes, and it will be included in the standards under the machinery directive. Then going further down, we come to EMC,
Yeah.
electromagnetic compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
This is about electromagnetic interference, and there's a cryptical way of describing the scope. Products liable to generate electromagnetic disturbance, or the performance of which is liable to be affected by such disturbance. Very cryptical, but what it means in practice is products that contain electronics or active components, they are known to generate EMI or be susceptible for EMI. Now, in your case, it's the question whether you have such controls, but at the same time, you do have electromotors in these grinders, and it depends a little bit on what type of electromotors you have. Yeah, because a lot of electromotors are known to generate EMI.
Question.
Yeah.
Our motors are already CE marked.
Mm-hmm.
So then I don't need to worry about EMC.
No, you still need to worry about it because it's your responsibility. You cannot just say, okay, this is it has CE marking.
Okay.
You can buy. I can take you to a shop here, and you will see products with CE marking. As I tend to joke, you can go to China, you can buy a grandmother with CE marking. If you're willing to pay for it, they're willing to sell it to you. So
Right.
the CE marking on the product does not mean anything.
Okay.
Since you are selling it, you're placing it in the market, you are responsible for it.
Yeah.
However, of course, if a supplier has already done conformity assessment, you may be able to leverage that, but
Okay.
not in all cases.
Okay.
So, for example, the electromotor, if it's just the electromotor that has some EMC ramification, has some relevance in EMC, then and it complies, then you could probably say yes because there is nothing else that could cause disturbance or cause the unit to be susceptible for EMI. But if you have the electromotor and you have an electronic control, then you already have a combination of sources of EMI. And
Mm-hmm.
then you would still need to check how is this combination doing? Because the manufacturer of the electromotor has not tested it with that particular control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the particular thing about EMC. It is a little bit complicated because EMI is invisible. So the only way to really determine it is by testing. And unfortunately, the test can be very, very expensive. Yeah. But so looking at your grinders and then maybe particular, you will have different models maybe. And so one model may be more complex than another. Possibly the very simple ones that have basically on off switch plus an electromotor, especially if it's an inductive electromotor, then EMC becomes less of a headache to you,
Okay.
especially if the electromotor is already tested. What you would need in such a case is not just a product that has a CE marking on it. You need documentation, you need proof.
Okay.
And the minimum thing that you need is a declaration of conformity to go to accompany the product. So what you can already do after this call is start to look at the different models and then start to collect for the components that you buy, whether you also have a declaration of conformity.
This would only be for electrical parts, right? Like it wouldn't be for a wire that we use to connect one thing to another. It would be for
Mm,
the motor.
not for EMC.
Okay.
However, for another directive that can come into play,
Okay.
and that is the ROHS
Yes, what
directive.
comes next? Yes. Yeah.
So EMC, but any component that comes with CE marking, it is good to ask also for a declaration of conformity because the CE marking by itself doesn't say anything. When you receive the declaration of conformity, then you have the information what they claim compliance with. So which directive, and
Right.
more importantly for you, which standards,
Okay.
because they may have tested this with in accordance with a standard that really is not relevant for you because it's for an application. It's, for example, for an industrial environment while you are using it for a commercial environment.
So standards. Okay.
Yeah, that is typically what we are looking for. Um, but I would say start collecting those declarations of conformity where possible, especially for electrical components. Ask them also for test reports. They're not forced to give it to you, but it gives you even more information. You want to do your due diligence. If you are going to rely with your declaration of conformity on statements, on declarations of other companies, you would like to be sure. Yes.
Yes.
You cannot assume. You have to know for sure. And therefore, you would like to receive that type of information. If you receive it, then you have more in hand. You have basically you have some more evidence,
Okay.
and then you can come to a point where you say it is justified for us not to do the testing because we feel that we have enough information. So that's how that works. Okay, so um, EMC directive is probably relevant at least for some of the models. Um, ROHS, restriction of hazardous substances. Yes, that is relevant because you have electrical and electronic equipment. That is what it is. And so this is the substances and the levels of the restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this applies to all electrical and electronic material. So this is where it does get relevant for you to have some kind of statement from the wire manufacturer whether they are RHS compliant. The good thing is that in the US and Canada, there are also requirements for ROHS. And typically now when you buy components, they come with some kind of statement about RHS compliance. And in this case, when you have statements for components and you, everything is covered, so you covered the whole machine, all the wires, everything, you have statements regarding RHS, that means that you then do not have to do testing anymore. So hopefully you'll be able to get for every component, every electrical component. Yeah. So it's not required for the metal enclosure. Yes, we do sometimes see that this comes with RHS declaration of conformity, but that's really nonsense. Yeah. It's for the electrical parts. Yeah. So that is another thing that you can do yourself. It requires some work from your side, but this allows you to save a lot of cost
Mm-hmm.
on testing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you will come to the point where you say, darn, I cannot get this for this particular component.
Mm-hmm.
Then make it easy on yourself. For the European models, I mean, continue to work with the supplier for the American models, but for the
Mm-hmm.
European models, we buy the same component from another manufacturer who does provide us with the necessary documentation. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very practical way of doing it. So um, I think that you, with some effort, you can avoid having to do testing on this. Yeah.
So if the component is manufactured in China and they tell me it is ROHS compliant, do I trust it? Do you guys trust Chinese?
I don't.
Okay, me neither.
I don't. But if they provide and yeah, of course now I have a trained eye, so I can spot whether a certificate is real, yes or no. But some of the certificates really look very convincing. But um, you would obviously be responsible if it turns out not to be in compliance. But at this moment, I do not see that the authorities are going uh, in lengths to test. They may do it, and if they come and they find nonconformity, you would be responsible for it. But it is unlikely that they're now going to refuse your machines on the basis of RHS.
Okay.
If you can show that you did the due diligence, that you, for every component, you have something in writing confirming that it complies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because otherwise they would say yes, but you have 4 or 5 components for which you do not have any evidence, and therefore you have a gap in your technical file. Then they would have a reason to. Yeah. But even then, at this moment, they are not really doing that.
we keep track of inventory, so I have a picture of every single component right down to the screw
Right.
and the
Yeah.
nut.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And so I think what you can do, probably you have it in a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And so what you can easily do is just add a column
Yeah.
or add maybe two columns. One column saying, does it have CE marking? Oh, you can have several columns while
Yeah.
you're at it. So
Yeah.
does it have CE marking? Then a column where you can indicate, did we receive a declaration of conformity or documentation proving compliance?
Okay.
And then it's very easy to identify those components that are causing issues.
Yeah. That's a good recommendation. Thank you for that. I will do that.
Yeah. Well, we are not representing a test laboratory, so I have no interest in selling you
No, I
test service.
I got it. I
Yeah.
got it.
So some test laboratories don't like us, but yeah, well,
Yep.
what can we do? We work for you, not for them.
The EU, do they respect the Canadian regulations more than the American regulations? RCSA versus the US
It's the same.
UL?
We
Same.
don't care about them. No, because to be honest, especially um, in Canada and the US, you use a completely different voltage range. So it's much lower voltage. And therefore, you do not have the same problems that we have.
Okay.
You are focused on preventing fire.
Yeah.
We are focused on preventing shock because people can get killed here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a completely different mindset. And yeah. Now, we do see that, for example, certain CSA and also certain UL standards are derived from IEC standards, the International Electrotechnical Committee, and also a lot of European standards are derived from IEC standards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is obviously that is helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. But it's in principle, the Canadian standards or the UL standards do not have a specific added value.
Okay.
Also, you cannot list on a declaration of conformity a UL standard or CSA standard.
Okay.
I would recommend you even not to do it because it is, it is drawing attention
Yeah.
unnecessary.
Okay.
When I go further down, well, we have the WE, which is electronic waste. Not so much your problem. Well, in your case, you have machines, and what you could do is offer. Well, the purpose of this directive is collection of electronic waste,
Mm-hmm.
electrical and electronic waste,
Mm-hmm.
to prevent that this all ends up in a landfill.
Yeah.
First of all, this applies only when you have a certain tonnage,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think that in the next year you will even reach this.
Yeah.
But what you can always do, there are basically two ways that you can comply with this directive. That is to offer a waste collections, so offer waste collection to your customers free of charge. So it must be free of charge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or to connect with an existing waste collection scheme, and they will then you have covered it.
So that's basically recycling it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, the idea is that you would take it back and that you would recycle the components, which in your case may be even a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's even interesting for you, and because you probably know your end users very well, you could offer them a way of saying, at the end of the life cycle, which with these grinders probably is very, very long time. You'll be retired already for a long time
Mm-hmm.
before a client may even consider doing this. Yeah?
Yeah.
But even then, what you could offer them is saying, let us know. We'll be happy to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
For you, this is a perfect marketing opportunity, a sales opportunity, because you would know the client is ready to buy
Right.
again.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Yep.
this is not a directive that is causing a lot of issues. It is giving you opportunities.
Okay.
For the rest, we can go a little bit quicker. So radio equipment, not unless you are using RF broadcasting or receiving components such as Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
Yep. Nope.
The others do not apply. ATAX is explosion, potential explosive atmospheres, which typically you are not dealing with.
Right.
I would probably recommend you to have some kind of disclaimer in your documentation, just stating not designed to be used in a potential explosive atmosphere, because obviously it could be used to do grind, and there is some you can grind very fine, and so you would have to consider dust explosion.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say solve it with such a disclaimer that it is not intended for that. Now, at this moment, for the rest, nothing applies. What you will see, well, this is a new one: eco design and energy efficiency labeling. This typically applies to consumer products,
Mm-hmm.
washing machines, and you have seen it. The washing machines with the labels, with the green bar or the yellow bar, and the
Yep.
level of consumption. The idea is that manufacturers take an effort in making them more energy efficiency. And there are now eco design which force you to make products more energy
Ours is energy
efficient.
efficient, but not enough. I mean, we've reduced the grinding time from upwards of 2 minutes down to less than 10 seconds.
Yeah,
Is it worth even mentioning? I don't know.
yeah. Well, the I think that currently you are not under, but just the other week we got the notification that there is now eco design requirements for electromotors and VSDs. VSDs means variable. What is it? Variable speed drives. Yeah, variable speed drives. Now this applies to the electromotor, and well, this just entered into force. I think you still have a transition period, but this is something that you would probably ask your electromotor manufacturer whether they are aware of Commission Regulation 2019-1781 and whether they comply with it. Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Yep. Yep.
So what we see with this one is that now gradually the European Commission is going to add industrial products as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The other types of products that are that may be interesting is for power adapters. So the
Mm-hmm.
type of power adapter that you see that comes with computers, or
Mm-hmm.
those also now need to comply with eco design.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
um, that is it in terms of directives and regulations. So machinery directive, this is the main one,
Yep.
includes mechanical safety and electrical safety. Then EMC,
Yep.
ROHS.
Yep.
That is what I would think apply.
All
Now,
right.
for the machinery directive, the conformity assessment is going to be, well, we are going to try to find a standard that you could use for the conformity assessment,
Mm-hmm.
and that in combination with a risk analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to teach you how to do the risk analysis.
Okay.
The electrical safety is going to be done in accordance with a standard. So when you do the homework assignment, you should find on the list of standards a standard for electrical safety.
Okay.
And that is the one that we are going to use as a basis for the assessment of the electrical safety.
Okay.
Um, then we have EMC. Well, let's look at the different models. So this is where you can already start to identify which of the models this may be relevant for. Obviously, here you can look at what the declarations of conformity of the electromotors say, because maybe they are already referring to the EMC directive. If they do, then obviously it would be applicable.
Okay.
And then we can look at the documentation further in order to see, do you have anything else in terms of electronics that would be relevant? Because if so, we need to consider doing additional testing for EMI.
Okay.
We're going to try to avoid that because EMI testing is expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then ROHS, we're going to try to cover with statements and declarations about ROHS compliance.
Right.
So the real work, for sure, is going to be with the machinery directive and the assessments there. And that is also what we're going to focus on.
Yep.
Then going back to the list of standards. So which I'm going to ask you to look at. So
Yep.
for you to have a better understanding what is going on here. So first of all, you notice that this is a page from the official journal of the European Union, which is the kind of state gazette, so to speak. This is the journal in which all the regulations of the EU are published.
Okay.
Here you can see that this is a Commission communication in the framework of implementation of directive, etc., etc. This is the machinery directive.
Mm-hmm.
And here you can see that this is actually the list of harmonized standards.
Okay.
Here in the table, you see different columns, and I will explain. So ESO stands for European Standards Organization. This is the standards organization, the standards body that has adopted and published the standard. We have 3 in the European Union: SAN, SANELEC, and ETSI. And this is all you need to know. For the rest, it's not really important.
Okay.
Then we have the reference and the title of the standard. This is what you have. This is all you have now at this moment to determine whether it may be applicable. So what you're going to do is basically an indicative evaluation or inventory, so to speak. So what I want you to do is just to highlight or to note the number. Yeah. And here you see the different way. So a directive you've seen, it is something like 2006/42/EC. And here you see that this is a completely different way of referencing. EN stands for European norm. Here it's ISO. So this is a European standard, but at the same time, it's an ISO standard, which is great because that's international. And then we have the number of the standard, a column, and then this is an indication of the year in which this standard was published. That is relevant because the list of standards may change and may start including newer versions of the standard. Yeah. That circles back to what we discussed in the beginning when we said we have this overview with the color codes. The color code may change. It may go from green to orange to red because maybe the list of standards was updated. Now they are referring to the 2019 version of this standard.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what you have to look for. Whether you see something, preferably something that is type C standard, is product specific standard. The third column indicates the first publication, the date of the first publication in the official journal. This is relevant because from this date, you can apply this standard and it would lead to the presumption of conformity.
Okay.
Then the fourth column, reference of superseded standard.
Right.
In other words, these, in this case, standards, multiple, have been replaced by a single standard.
Right.
And then finally, the column that says the date of cessation of the presumption of conformity of superseded standard. In other words, the date that the presumption of conformity of the superseded standard ended. So you were not, from this date, you were not longer allowed to use these standards to prove compliance.
Oh,
Yeah?
okay.
That is what that means. Or, another way of looking at it, there is a transition period
Mm-hmm.
from this date to this date where you could use both the new standard and the old standards.
Standard. Okay.
But after this date, you cannot longer use these ones. You have to use this one.
Got it.
That is important. That is why I'm explaining it to you in length, so you will be able to identify when we are announcing on the platform, or you receive an email. We say there is a new list of harmonized standards for the machinery directive. Then you have to be alerted and say, okay, I need to check this.
Mm-hmm.
Check the references to our standards to see if something has changed, because it may mean that we have entered into a transition period, and we need, typically you need that period to make the transition.
Yeah.
Maybe redo conformity assessment.
Mm-hmm.
As a minimum, update your documentation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So probably your head is spinning now.
I'm glad I recorded this.
Yes. I wanted to spend a lot of time explaining you the different terms, because in the communication with your clients, with authorities, you will hear terms that may confuse you. What is important is you have to comply with a directive or a regulation. We have identified which ones are important for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that means that now we can start to look at what are actually the requirements,
mm-hmm.
and how are we supposed to do the conformity assessment. Okay. And we will talk about that in the next session in more length. You now also saw the difference with standards and the advantage of using the European harmonized standards, because they give you the presumption of conformity. So in principle, they make it easier. And now the next step is for you to determine, to go through this list and highlight or note the ones that you think apply.
Okay.
And hopefully you'll find product specific standard. And from that quick search we did, there is hope.
Yeah.
There is another trick of doing this, is by looking at what is your competition doing, what are they referring to. But be careful, because we not seldomly see companies copy mistakes of their competitors.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The closest
so if you're
is in England, sorry. It's a company in England. So yeah, I'm going to see what I can find there.
Yeah. So see if you can get a declaration of conformity from them.
Mm-hmm.
If you Google declaration of conformity and then the product name and the number, Google, if it's online, Google finds it. Yeah.
Yep. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Okay. And typically a declaration of conformity contains all that information.
Okay.
but be careful. I would use it only as a starting
As
point,
a reference, yeah.
but do this exercise yourself, and then on the next session we can discuss what you have found, and I will
Yeah.
tell you this one is relevant, this one is not so relevant.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we can also decide, because the standards are not free of charge,
Yeah.
because they are not, it's not mandatory to use them.
Yeah.
This is a way that standards bodies finance their work by selling the standards.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But we will help you to identify which standards are really worthwhile for you to get and which are the ones that you do not have to invest in. Yeah. Um, there are a few that we are going to recommend, but also a lot that where we are going to say no need.
Okay.
Use common sense. Um, so that is for the next. What I can do is I will download. Let's see, is it? Yeah. So it's downloading. I will send it to you via email, so you don't have to worry about where did he put all this information. For
Okay.
for now, because you're in a hurry, um, I will send it to you so you can start today.
Hmm.
Basically,
Hmm. Hmm.
the other thing that you can start to do is look at your bill of materials, for try to find declarations of conformity of the components that you have, because then you will have a better understanding where you stand
Right. Okay.
and what should be the focus.
Right.
And then I'll leave it to you to book the next session.
Yes.
You decide on the pace. If you want to do it tomorrow, we can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think so, but yeah, wishful
Yeah.
thinking. Okay.
Well, but it would probably be ideal if, um, let's say, beginning of next week, sometime maybe Monday or Tuesday, if we can start with explaining to you the conformity assessment, the risk analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want you to wrap your head around that,
Okay.
know how to do that. We're going to try to make it's very complicated, but we break it down into small um, pieces.
Okay.
That's how you eat the elephant,
Yeah.
right? And then it will be digestible for you, and then you can start with that, and that is going to be really, um, for CE compliance, huge step.
Okay. I'll
And
make sure
you,
my business partner is on next time as well. So
yeah,
he's in an area right now where Wi-Fi is so. So I'll make sure he's available next Monday,
yeah,
and I'll have him listen to this today.
yeah. Then with your analysis of the list of standards, then probably we can find a few standards, hopefully is standards for grinders that you could use as a basis, but that actually does not relieve you of doing the risk analysis.
No,
It
understood.
would make it easier probably, because in the standards they have probably already identified most of the hazards,
Mm-hmm.
and they have probably already proposed safety solutions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to do that risk analysis is going to be very, very useful. And if you or your partner is a engineer in background,
Mm-hmm.
is going to be very, very useful. And most engineers love this stuff, because you will start to look at your grinders with, a new perspective, and
Yes.
say, oh, wait a minute, we never analyzed this particular hazard. It does have this hazard, and we need to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As a minimum, I'm not sure that you will come to the conclusion that something has to be changed. Maybe small things. Yeah. So what we sometimes see is some gaps are too big, so it would be possible to stick in a stick or something like that, and touch live parts or moving parts, which is not good, not going to be acceptable.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy
But
to say that of all the grinders on the market, we're the only ones that have a measure to prevent the user from starting the unit if the magnets aren't touching. We're the only ones that have that. So
mhm,
every other grinder, the cover can be off and the blades can be going, not with
Well,
ours.
which is not good and unacceptable. I think from what you will see when you do the risk analysis, you will come to the conclusion this is not acceptable according to the risk analysis, and therefore um, those competitors really run the risk of being stopped and prohibited to sell.
To sell. Oh, that'd be
But
interesting.
in any case, you need to go through this exercise because you can be asked to show your technical file,
Hmm.
and then the authorities expect to find the risk analysis and conformity assessments against standards in accordance with standards, for example. Because yeah, how else are you proving that your
Hmm.
product is safe? Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Do you
um,
find that when it's a product designed for a consumer versus a company, like a professional company, that the standards are slightly more elevated for consumers because consumers don't read, don't think, don't do, right?
right,
Okay, so you, yeah,
educated users, huh? I mean, professional users, you can expect that they have some level of understanding.
right.
Um, there are other ways of instructing them.
Hmm.
Consumers, this is not the case, and you have to really design and ensure that it can be used safely.
Yeah, we found that with the labeling required for our unit for CSA requirements, because even the guy said this isn't going into a house where there's children, so you don't need that label type of thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not a grinder meant for the kitchen; it's a grinder meant for the
Right,
deaf industry. So
right.
yeah, they made adjustments there for us.
Yeah. Now I must say I don't know. I'm not a specialist in CSA or in sorry CPSC, but I sometimes get the impression, guys, I do not understand why you are focusing on a certain label.
Hmm.
Focus on risk assessment
Right,
because the risk assessment will determine what you can expect, where things can go wrong.
right.
I had many cases where I recently had a case where a European company wanted to go to the US, and in Europe they had a age rate on their product because in Europe they are required to do so, and their consultant in the US said, "No, please remove it because if you have this age rate, then it's going to be considered this." We didn't understand, but they had to do it.
Interesting.
So in the EU, the regulations start with the for mechanical safety with the idea that you will do a risk analysis. This is why it's a Type A standard, applies to all machines,
Okay.
and you will we'll go into that in the next session, and it's actually quite. Um, I like it. It's fun to do. Yes,
Mhm.
it's a hassle that you have to go through the process, but when you are doing it, if you really take some time to understand. And with the grinders, it's not going to be hugely complicated. It's not like
Right.
a. So I think in one day or in an afternoon you can do it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Chris
But
and I are going to look forward to that for sure.
yeah, and it may lead you to consider, oh, we need to make some changes to because we could make it even better.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all for that. Okay, I have my homework.
Once you have done that,
Yeah.
um, so there are two things that are important. EMC, I think I have the feeling that we probably can find, at least for some models, we can find some kind of workaround
Hmm.
if the electromotor is indeed CE approved and CE covers the EMC.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then really we have to focus on mechanical safety and electrical safety.
Okay.
And the electrical safety is going to be done in accordance with the standard. And this is where you really have to, or your electrical engineer really has to look into the standard and compare the clause of the standard with the design.
Right.
And there you will find, probably you will find some um, requirements for wiring,
Okay.
color codes. The color codes of wiring in the US and in the EU are different. Okay, and that is these are the kinds of things that you would like to identify as early as possible, because um, it can mean that you have to change the wires for the European models. Okay.
Um, yes. So that's already indicated on the motor, which I'll make sure that you have for our next call so that you can see it. The motor has all the labels that covers that,
Yeah.
where the wires have to change when it goes to Europe.
Yeah. Okay.
What you're
Very good.
referring to?
Yeah, and but also the if you are buying the wire in the US and you buy white and black insulation, so the colors of the wires,
Yeah.
sorry, the colors of the insulation material of the wire. Yeah.
Okay.
In the European standards, you will find that there are requirements for the colors that you use. So, for example, we use blue and brown, and we use yellow and green for ground.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That
that
has
is important because that is something that is easy to detect. An inspector can open the machine, and if he already sees this is the US way of doing the wires, he knows.
right. Right.
Yeah. And well, you're recording this, so I have to be careful with what I'm saying, what I'm
I'm not going to
advising
share
to.
this with
If
anybody.
this
I
is
promise.
one particular unit you are trying to deliver very, very fast, okay, the unit may get through, it will not be opened, and you would be good. But, and I don't think that the color codes is a huge safety risk. However,
Yeah.
we have to consider that maybe something happens with the machine, and an electrical engineer is trying to fix it and then opens the machine to say, what is this? I don't understand what wire is for what.
Right. Right. Right.
That is the reason why we have the color codes in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In EU, it's all harmonized, and every electrical engineer will open and they will see, this is brown goes here, this is blue goes there, and this is ground.
This part of this recording right now, my business partner will be very interested in because he comes from the UK, right?
Okay.
So those
And
were
so
some of the questions
he's
when we were looking.
very familiar with that.
He's
Yeah.
very familiar with that.
Yeah.
But he was also given a different perspective on it from a local engineer that said, no, for Europe, you can do this. Because when he spoke to the motor company, he was questioning some of these wires and colors and everything. And the motor company came back and said, trust us, our motor is designed to convert to EU standards or EU
Yeah.
protocol.
Yeah.
And he still didn't get, he still questioned it. And the engineer said, no, Chris, you can do this and this and this, and it works just fine. And he was like, oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
So I know that this part is really important, especially if we're, if we're planning on shipping 3 units very soon. We have to.
Right.
He's still not convinced the motor's going to work in Europe by following what the motor company guy said. He's not convinced of that.
Well, I like that kind of stubbornness. I'm stubborn too. I believe my own eyes. So yeah.
But apparently, there's a way for us to jimmy something here in Canada to test as if we were sitting in Europe to see if it's going to work. So
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure. So, okay, I can't find it handy, so I'll email it to you when I do find it.
Okay.
The label.
So I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yes,
So
we
that's a good foundation. My impression is it's not so bad.
Okay. Okay.
There are a few steps that you really do need to take. Fortunately, you can do them yourself.
Okay.
This is where, yes, it takes a little bit more effort from your side, but at the same time, you are saving yourself thousands and thousands of dollars,
Yep.
US dollars, not Canadian dollars,
Yes.
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Because, for example, EMC testing, electrical safety testing, I see quotes from UL, CSA, 10,000, 12,000
Yes.
more.
Yes. Yes. We've gotten quotes, and it wasn't. It didn't make sense for us to do that. So
Yeah. And so not necessary, because I think most of it you can do yourself.
yes. Yes. And we have an inspector come each time to do a CSA approval. It's cheaper than doing the annual $15,000 investment. So
Right.
$2 a sticker, $300 for his time. We have 50 machines. He goes, boom, 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 done.
Right.
A lot cheaper than the other option. All right, hon. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was
I'm
a
going to
pleasure.
send you that list of standards so you can start working on that.
I am, and you'll do a new account under Hello at Tilt Grind.
Yes,
I'll
I will
wait
do
to get
that.
that from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And then
You said you already sent me an email on that, right?
yes, but do you want me to send it again?
Yeah, please, because to be honest, I have so many things on my head. It's
yeah, I'll
yeah.
send that as soon as we hang
Okay,
up.
because that's a good reminder for me.
Thank you. Well, at least you got the email about coming to my whereby, so thank you for that.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay.
And we love Whereby. It's a really very nice
Too.
program.
It's one of my favorite. Yes.
Yeah.
Again,
All right. Thank you very much, Jocelyn. Take care. And then we'll talk, I guess, beginning of next week.
yes, for sure.
Okay.
I'll send you an email. Thank you,
Thank
hon.
you. Bye-bye.